Arrived at the time of the debate where the candidates can ask questions of the other right now. We'll let each candidate spend about a minute asking the question so as not to filibuster. A 2-minute reply or thereabouts and a 1-minute rebuttal. We'll start with Mr. Zakari, a question for Congressman Lanchman.
Thank you. Congressman, all of the spending measures that you have supported over the last couple of years, and in what, if I recall correctly, the Washington Post reported as about a 99.3% record of voting with House leadership, were all, of course, done so that things would get better for the American people. Do you contend that the result of all of that spending has been an improvement in the lot of the average American? And if not, is it still out there to come? Is the magic going to happen at some point? And can you give us some kind of an estimate as to when?
Well, for those people who have been put to work as a result of the steps that we've taken to try to get this economy back on track and create jobs, those people that have received a job, it has benefited them. The problem is that there's still too many people that are out of work. And for those people that still don't have a job, the stimulus or other investments that we've made have not worked. And I'm not satisfied at all where we are. And I'm going to leave no stone unturned to create the jobs that we need to create, that we get our economy back on track, that we lay the groundwork for a brighter, stronger future, whether it's through investments in education, like the $75 million grant that has come here to Rhode Island through the Race to the Top grant, that is going to better able to assess both teachers' performance and the data collection, and it's going to give us a better understanding of how our system of education is functioning, how it can be improved, or the work that we're doing to lay the groundwork for future investments in alternative energy sources, or investments in health information technology. These are going to yield long-term sustained benefits in job creation and a stronger economy. So I stand by the things that we have done, the investments we've made, and I'm looking forward to the day, very near future, we have aggressive job creation for our state and the country.
Works, Carey.
I'll take that as an unqualified yes from you, sir. I, on the other hand, believe that the opportunity, if there was one, was squandered.
Yes to job creation, yes. I stand by my record.
Yes to the stimulus spending being a good thing. The fact of the matter is that I believe that any opportunity we might have had got squandered when we allowed ourselves to use this stimulus payout to take care of short-term needs in state governments and a couple of things like the General Motors bailout. The fact of the matter is that none of it was used to create the environment we discussed earlier, whereby private sector would create jobs. All of the jobs that Mr. Langevin talks about are jobs from the government, and they are tied to the government. Once again, our taxes taken from us and given back to us if we're good.
Congressman Lanchman, a question for Mr. Zakari.
Well, Mr. Zakari misses the point that we passed things like the HIRE Act that allowed for small businesses to get tax credits and incentives for hiring people that have been out of work. And also the loan fund that was just created to incentivize lending to small businesses. Those are things that I strongly support. But let me turn to deficits, because it's deeply concerning to me, to all of us, and I'm not at all satisfied with where our spending is and the level of debt. But we all know deficits are unsustainable, and I proudly supported, for example, pay-go legislation that requires for every dollar spent there's a tax cut that's given as an offset, and other efforts to bring our budget back into balance. But I'm curious to hear your plan for cutting our deficits. You say that you want to repeal the health reform bill, for example, but the repeal would come at a cost of over $100 billion over the next few years, because there are significant savings as a result of health reform. And you want tax cuts for the wealthy, but for those that will cost $700 billion. Where does the cutting come in?
Well, I want tax cuts for everyone, and I want spending cuts for everyone. And I don't accept anybody's estimate that the current Obamacare system is going to save a bunch of money for us down the road. I don't believe it for a second. The fact of the matter is that the concept of pay-go legislation is a good idea. You can't do something new unless you can find the money for it. I am running to be your Mr. Pay-go in Washington. I am running to say I'm not going to vote for anything that's going to increase taxes. If you need new spending, that's a new priority. Where's the old spending going to be reduced to cover that new higher priority? That's the kind of calculus that I would expect the federal legislature to be doing every single day. I think that if we look at it that way, then we can, in fact, reduce the expenditures of every single department in the federal government and do so dramatically. And if we do, what we will do is send a signal to the financial markets that the giant vacuum cleaner is not going to suck up all the dollars anymore. And those dollars will be used with or without your fund for small businesses by banks to loan to business plans that will be profitable, that will cause enterprises to grow. Growing enterprises is the only place that jobs come from. That's how an economy comes back into a functioning condition.
Congressman.
Well, certainly, I believe that the best area to create jobs is in the private sector, and looking aggressively at every opportunity to support small business. But the simple fact of the matter is, when we talk at, and my question really was about tax cuts and where the money is going to come from. I believe that we should extend the tax cuts for the middle income and low income families, let them expire for people making over $250,000 a year. That would bring in $700 billion over the next 10 years. What I asked Mr. Harry is where the cuts are going to come from if he's not going to support letting the tax cuts expire for the wealthiest 1% of Americans. And where is that $700 billion going to come from that it would generate by letting those tax cuts for the wealthy expire?
Mr. Zakari, question for Congressman Lanchman, sir.
Congressman, one of the things that's been troubling a number of the senior citizens in our district that I have spoken to as I've been out campaigning is the fact that the legislation for cost of living increases for Social Security payments is triggered by government numbers that have not increased recently. So there have been no raises for recipients of Social Security. They are particularly offended by the fact that it seems like there was a substantial raise in pay for congressmen. And I wonder how you square to the people that you talk to or among our senior citizens, how they have to get along with another year, was it the second or third year, without any kind of an increase, and yet you can vote one for yourself.
Yeah, I've never voted for a salary increase for members of Congress. And by the way, there was no increase for members of Congress last year, so you're sadly misinformed once again. And there won't be any increase for members of Congress this year either. And if they attempted to vote for an increase for members of Congress, I would vote against it. It is troubling to me that people are still struggling, particularly our seniors, and there was no increase in Social Security. But I have supported the idea of giving $250 to each senior on Social Security, and we're going to find a way to do it when we get back to Washington in November in a lame duck session of Congress, and we're also going to find a way to pay for it.
Mr. Zakari.
I suspect that PolitiFact is going to tell one of us that our pants are on fire.
Congressman Langevin, question for Mr. Zakari.
Well, there's some water here for Mr. Zakari to put his pants out on fire. Yeah, here you go, Mark.
System sufficient here as well. Congressman, a question for...
So let me just say that I've spent years working with the Pentagon to achieve bulk purchasing savings and increase jobs at Electric Boat by securing the purchase of 2 submarines per year. You, on the other hand, said on October 27th in the Providence Journal that, and I quote, it may be necessary to cut production of such weapons as nuclear submarines, and that the local defense industry will find ways to prosper by adapting to Pentagon needs. Then, in the past weekend, you said on Newsmakers that you're not critical of subproduction and that we will always have subproduction if you have anything to do about it. Which is it? Do you support our state's established defense industry and its jobs, or don't you?
Well, I certainly do support it, of course. And the original statement in October was a statement regarding the products that we were producing 20 years ago. Fleet ballistic missile submarines were necessary when we were looking at fighting a nation state. Now we're looking at things like the Virginia-class submarines, which are a dramatic improvement for the kinds of fights that we're going to be fighting in the next 20 years. Manufacturing always has new products in the pipeline. The submarine factory at Quonset and, in fact, Groton is no different. And so I think what you need to do is try not to take those things out of context. And what you'll see is that I was talking about a moment that we are at right now, which is historic in its ability to have us reconfigure our defense forces to be the defense forces we really need in the years immediately ahead, and to do so while also replacing the equipment that's been just worn out over the last 10 years of action in the field, and to increase pay and benefits to the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that are our war fighters. The benefits, especially, are sorely needed. Now, to do that and reduce money in the overall defense appropriation, what we're going to have to do is have a smaller, more focused overall Defense Department, and I believe that is a far more detailed and in-depth concept than just which submarine we're going to be building at Quonset. As I said just last Saturday, we will always be building submarines at Electric Boat.
Congressman.
Well, as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, I certainly support Pentagon transformation to do away with programs that aren't working, that are big military, that don't adapt to the current situation. And I'm looking for every way to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck out of the for our taxpayers, and have supported things like procurement reform in the Pentagon to make sure that we're eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in programs that aren't working, but investing in those types of military programs that are working. And certainly I'm proud of my support for the Virginia-class submarine that are playing thousands of people in Rhode Island and Connecticut, that many Rhode Islanders work. In fact, because of my work on the Armed Services Committee for Electric Boat to stop building 2 submarines per year, Electric Boat is hiring hundreds of people right now as we speak, and that's a direct result of my work on the Armed Services Committee and the support of our submarine building program.
Mr. Scary, a final question for Congressman Langevin.
I would like to stay on the subject of defense for a minute. Your talk about any kind of tweaking that you've been able to do to the procurement process is a small issue. The big issues in the Pentagon are personnel costs and equipment costs. I think that if you take a look at when I was in the service in the 70s, and you take a look at the number of senior military staff that existed throughout any of the branches or all of them then, and you take a look at the numbers now, what you're going to find is there's been an explosion in the number of general officers, and of course all the attendant costs that go along with them. And if somebody is in line to become a general officer, and they do, then you got to find a job for them, and that's been one of the drivers of all the different expanding departments. Do you or do you not think that the Congress of the United States can take an active role in assisting the Pentagon in reconfiguring itself for the future that we face today?
Congressman.
Well, I clearly think that it should be a partnership between the Congress and the Pentagon as we go through a transformation of our military, and making sure that we're adapting to the fights that we're fighting today. They say we always fight the last war. Well, we have to get smarter about how we're spending our dollars, and making sure that we invest in the military that we need, not the military of yesterday.